Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give folks a couple minutes to join us, and then we're going to get started.
I feel like we should have like elevator music right now.
I know.
That's the same thing.
As you all file in.
I was just thinking that. I thought, you know what? Yeah, that would have been the perfect spot.
Well, I think let's get started, and then folks will join us because I want to welcome you all to Edelweiss Presents Dig In. Just to introduce myself, I'm Gabriella. I'm the content manager here at Edelweiss. If you're not familiar with us, Edelweiss is an online platform that sits in the middle of the book ecosystem, and we help book professionals do their jobs. Our site, Edelweiss Community, is designed for book lovers to connect, talk about books that they loved, and discover new ones. If you haven't already gotten a chance to take a peek when you registered for this event, we hope you will give the site a try. But we are here today with a feast for us foodies. Dig In is a celebration of the relationship between food and storytelling. It is inspired by the way that one dish can taste of so many stories, moments of joy, memories of loved ones, acts of resistance, and hopes for the future. As so many of us have experienced, that's why we're all here today, the beauty and power of food is that it is never just food. So joining us for these conversations are some of the chefs and authors behind the season's most exciting cookbooks. And we really hope today whets your appetite for more of their work and that you order their wonderful books from your favorite indie bookstore. You can see all of today's featured titles on the landing page for this event, and we will also be dropping links to them in the Zoom chat. We will have a 15-minute break in between our panel discussions today, just in case you get too hungry and need a snack. And at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have a special presentation of our Editor's Pick series, where publishers will be presenting their favorite food-themed books to you. Finally, we are so excited for some great conversations in the chat, but please know that we have a zero tolerance policy for harassment of any kind, and the chat will be monitored. We will also have time for audience Q&A at the end of the discussion, so please submit any questions via the Q&A box. So now we can jump right in. I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for the first discussion of the day, Mindy Chen. Mindy is a bookseller and events coordinator for Word bookstores in Brooklyn and Jersey City. Originally from Southern California, she moved east to work in publishing, but found hand-selling books way more fun than editing textbooks. Besides reading, she likes lace making, daydreaming about travel plans, and wondering what's for dinner. So take it away, Mindy.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, Edelweiss, so much. I'm so thrilled and honored to be talking to Toya and Andrea about their cookbooks. I would love to introduce you guys. Andrea Pons is a production manager, food stylist, and author based in Seattle, Washington. Born in Guanajuato, Mexico, and raised in the United States, Andrea Pons creates recipes that encourage readers to share a meal around the dinner table and that raise awareness about immigration. We also have Toya Boudy. Toya has appeared on Guy's Grocery Games, TLC, and Food Network. Crowned Best Home Cook by Hallmark's Home and Family Channel, Boudy is an ambassador for the New Orleans Multicultural Tourism Network. She lives with her Andrea. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure being here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited to talk about cookbooks. I love reading cookbooks. I'm not the greatest at cooking from cookbooks, but I love reading them. And so, I mean, my first question is, how did these cookbooks come to life? You guys have both like very strong backgrounds in sort of like food, culture, personal life, right? And then these cookbooks really felt so reflective of that experience. So I was wondering, like, how did it start?
Well, for me, it started, I try to find a flow in the projects or things that I do. And I try to, not force things. So when it was first brought up to me, it was brought up to me at least maybe about 3 times. And first my husband, and he said, I think maybe you should do another cookbook. And I said, no. And then it came up again from a food stylist I was working with. And then after that, it was another person. And then like less than 30 days, an agent reached out to me and I said, you know what? I believe that all of this is happening because there's a message in me that has to get out to inspire someone. And that's when the whole idea and concept for the book jumped in my mind from beginning to end. And I even saw the cover as a first flash, of me holding the watermelon. And my whole mission is to ignite fires in people, to inspire them, and then to educate them about the culture they may not know. So that's how the book came about. It was a bunch of divine connections that just led to it. And I just kind of obeyed the flow.
Wow. I love hearing your story, Toya, because I feel like although we came up with our books in such different ways, I also feel that's like just connection to the serendipities in life and leaning into
Yes.
them
Yes.
and wanting to use food as a bridge for something else, right? Because
Right.
that was really what it came down for me. I'm a first-time cookbook author. This is my debut cookbook. I'm a home chef. Thank you. I'm a home chef. I'm self-taught, and my cookbook at first was just a passion project. I inherited my grandma's recipe book. My grandma has Alzheimer's, and I set out to recreate her recipes because I was really longing for Mexico and really missing my family. And my grandma cooks like any good Mexican grandma, so there's no measurements. There's missing ingredients in the methods that are like never listed in the ingredient list. And I just wanted to make something that was more cohesive and easy to follow, so I could gift it to my sister and gift it to my cousins and kind of keep, grandma's legacy going. And I say that my passion turned into purpose when I saw the opportunity to help my family gain safety in this country, because we've been migrants for 17 years. I'm the first person in my family to become a citizen. I just gained my citizenship in 2020 after almost facing deportation that same day. I mean, not same day, same.
Wow.
It was really scary time, but it came to me just kind of like how your cookbook came to you. I was sitting in the car with my dad minutes after I got my citizenship. He was waiting for me in the immigration office's parking lot. And I looked at him and I'm like, we have to start the process for you and mom today. And he's like, well, where are we going to get 20 grand from? And that's where like it all just kind of happened so rapidly. But I'm like, the book. And I put out the book and I immediately came up with the title for it. I was like, it's going to be titled Mamacita, which is what you call my mom. I'm like, that's going to be the title. It's just something I heard. And there was like no question. I'm like, this is it. This is what we're going to do. So yeah. And I'm like, I'm with you, Toya. Like my hope for people who read this book is like, I hope that they feel inspired to go after whatever it is they want to do. Because I truly believe that we're limitless, right? Like we can do it. We truly are limitless. And it's worth exploring. It's worth trying.
It is worth it. And them, someone seeing your book and seeing my book, it could make them, especially owning and standing in and not budging about your culture and what it represents and not, watering it down any. That really inspires people. It's a jolt at first, like, man, this person, what really intrigues them is that they're like, man, Gabriella, not Gabriella, but anyone, any name knows who they are when they stand in who they, where they come from and everything. And that's the beautiful part about the book. And then like truly representing your portion of the culture.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I love it.
I love it. I do. I love passion and purpose and everything. And then food too, because, you know, for both, I feel like when I saw the cover for your book, I thought, yeah, that's on the vibe. Mine is like, it's just, no, this is who I am and I'm not moving. And people can see that and just, they dig in, and food is like, it's like the heartbeat for our cultures, you know, we can't get away from it. We can't.
100%. I love that you brought that up, because I've been asked a few times, like, oh, like, you know, like the cover of my cookbook doesn't look like a Mexican cookbook cover. Like if Mamacita, like if the title were to be removed, I don't know that people would immediately think Mexican food, and that's on purpose, because I'm trying to reframe the way, at least here in America, that people think about Mexican culture and Mexican food.
I love it.
And I grew up landlocked. So for me, having a fish on the cover was a little bit of a tribute to the fact that I was, you know, I grew up in the Northwest here in the United States, but also I love the seafood in Mexico, and it doesn't always get highlighted. Like people know about ceviche, but people don't know about like bacalao, la vizcaína. Like they don't know about other dishes that like are seafood center that I grew up eating. And I'm like, I just want people to think about Mexican culture differently, which is also why I don't have a single taco recipe in my book, because I'm
I love it.
I love that part. Yeah.
Tortillas,
I love it.
Tortillas for Mexicans are like, it's funny. So my partner's Korean, and I'm like, okay, a tortilla for me is what rice is for you. It's just a vessel for the food to go from your plate to your mouth. That's really how I see it. Like anything can be a taco. I make tacos out of soup all the time. I just dip my tortilla in and stuff it with whatever is in my soup bowl, and I eat it, and that's now a taco. And so I just, I want to reframe the way people think about food, and especially, you know, the way that they think about cultural food, because I think sometimes people are intimidated to try something outside of what is served to them at restaurants, for example.
True. That's very true. And you know what you said about the cover, but you know, when I see your cover, when I saw it for the first time, I thought it was so warm, and I felt like it just felt like a place to sit, you know. And I love that you went that route to spotlight something different. And that was like along the lines of what I did with the watermelon. You know, when I first told my mother about it, both my parents are born and raised New Orleanians. And when I said, Mom, I have watermelon on the cover, she said, Toya, no. You know, in the Black community, you know, it's kind of like, girl, put the watermelon down at the party. You don't want to be caught with the watermelon, you know. But I was teaching kids online during the pandemic, Black history through food. And at the end, I put this little blip where I said, fun fact, bet you didn't know this was African. Yeah. So I know. And I did it like that too.
I love it. No.
But when I did watermelon, you know, immediately I got hit in the gut with these images in my head of, you know, blackface and stuff like that, and just slurs. And I thought, I got to give this to these kids. And, you know, sometimes when we go over our history, you know, and we explain to someone, it can sound sad. But my thing was to flip it and make it, no, this is a majestic fruit that grows in 85% sand, and it's something to be proud of. Egyptians would take it traveling through the desert, like just making it this just melody of a nice, beautiful song of an image, you know. And that's why I chose it. And I was gripping it, and I said, I want to grip it till the juice comes out. And the guy said, I don't know if we're gonna catch that juice. I don't know if we're gonna girl, I sat in there and I gripped it, and it just, the image of it, I wanted to make people feel warm. And when I told my mama, who, I mean, she dealt with segregation, everything, you know, so she was deep in the whole thing, you know. And when I told her it and I showed her the cover, she said, that makes me want to eat watermelon.
I love it.
We started the conversation with her saying, Toya, girl, don't you? You know, that's like being the first to pick up fried chicken at a party. You know what I'm saying? Like, Don't do that. No, do it.
Do it. That just made my entire body like goosebumps everywhere. And I love it so much because it goes back to what you said earlier. You're like, this cookbooks is an opportunity for us to like truly show up as everything we want. And you know what you're saying resonates with me in the sense of like, I grew up in a little bit of a contradiction, right? Because I'm Mexican and I don't always feel like I look like it, because when I'm in Mexico, I look like my family, I look like the people in my community. And when I came here, I got questioned a lot with like, are you actually Mexican? And it wasn't until they heard my accent or heard me speak Spanish that they would believe me. But even then I got questioned a lot, right? Like, well, then, you know, if you're Mexican, then like, where's your green card? Things like that, which is really scary. And so I think that what I find so beautiful about your cover, not just the history of like the beauty that it is, like I you know, not to get super cheesy and stuff, but like fruit and like in general, like the history, like it is miraculous how it comes to be, you know, and how everything in nature works in synergy. And I have a lot of respect for it. And I love that you're highlighting the beauty of it, not this like just, I guess, perspective, misunderstanding and racism that people have about something that is so endearing to our culture. And then it gets really twisted sometimes like American point of view, which is exactly what's happened. You know, I just celebrated Dia de los Muertos, and it's a day that like growing up at first, like in my home was super cherished, right? But then it was the same thing as you. It's like, okay, we're gonna act a certain way inside our walls, inside the comfort of our home. But then when you step outside, don't do any of the stuff you normally do at home. Right? Like if you're telling me like at home, like watermelon is celebrated, but then your mom's like, don't let people know. It was the same for me, where it was like, I had all these customs and traditions and just foods in general that were like really celebrated in my family. But then it's like, okay, when you step outside the doors, don't mention it. And something that even happened after I put the cookbook out is because I have a great grandmother that's Italian. My parents saw an opportunity to maybe protect my sister and I think that's how they saw it in their eyes. So when we first migrated, they asked my sister and I to tell people that we were Mexican Italian if they ever asked where we were from. And that really confused me because I didn't grow up with Italian culture. My great grandmother, who I love so much, she passed away when I was 5. So I didn't grow up making her dishes. I did not grow up understanding Italian culture at all. But when I moved to America, it's like, okay, tell them you're Mexican Italian to be better accepted. It made me feel like, well, I'm not Italian and I'm not American, which leaves me just being Mexican. And if I can't just be Mexican, that must mean that Mexican is really bad and that I should hide behind, you know, that I should hide away from just showing up as Mexican. And I did that for a very long time. And it shook me because, and I bring this up because it reminds me of your story about your mom being like, Toya, do not put the watermelon on the cover, right? It's like this sense of like, they want to protect you from whatever it is that they faced or they think you're going to face. And I was selling my cookbook when I first self-published. I was selling it at a farmer's market in Inum Club, which is this little conservative farmer's town where my parents live. And this older white couple came up to my table and was inquiring about the book. And they were like, oh, we're going to do another round and we're going to come back and buy the book. And I was like, great, wonderful. And my dad's sitting next to me and he starts talking and he's like, yeah, the recipes were Mexican Italian. And I was biting my tongue because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to disrespect my dad in front of people at all. But once they left, I was like, Papi, what you just did is exactly what I'm trying to stop us from doing.
Right.
You have so much talent. You are amazing. You're putting out great things into your community, and it all deserves to be Mexican. You do not need to give away whatever it is that you're trying to put out into the world to this other culture because you think it's better accepted in the area that we live in. And I'm like, I literally wrote about it in the book. I'm like, we have to stop that dialogue that ends today. Like, I love you. And he feels so bad, but I'm like, it's not about making you feel bad. It's I just want to give you the power back.
It's freedom.
It's a freedom.
It's taking the narrative and flipping it and rearranging it. And you know, you deal with that, and it's so, it's, I love how the worlds meet, you know, and that's why there's a lot of culture shots in the book showing my hair or my nails, or when I went on TV, I always had my sleeves rolled up so you can see tattoos, gold chains, and stuff like that. It was really to just like, let me put my Black girl flex, you know, just like firmly sit in it, because I had a mentor, well, my old mentor, when he saw me wearing my afro, he was like, that's not gonna work on the networks. That's not gonna work, Toya. Cut your nails down, the tattoos, all of that. And it's just, the thing is, we don't have to hide being ourselves anymore. Like, it's a beautiful thing to be Mexican, period. Not Mexican hyphen, but like Mexican, period. It's a beautiful thing to be Black, period. That's
100%. I'm so inspired by what you're saying, because
I think that was.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mindy. I don't know if she could.
I was just gonna say, like, I think like that is really the what I got out of reading your cookbooks. You guys had such a strong sense of responsibility to like telling your story, telling the story of your family and your community, and like really using food as a way to have difficult conversations with people, with the public, you know, with each other. And I thought that, like, it was beautifully done, the way that you guys really were so generous in kind of sharing, you know, such personal struggles and trauma, you know, and making food out of that. So, and just, you know, being able and generous and responsible. I think that was one of the best parts of these cookbooks, is like just that honesty and that generosity.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, do you like has this sort of like, I mean, like Andrea, you just said, like, it just started all these conversations with your dad, and Toya, you know, you talked about watermelon with your mom. Like, have these conversations been happening more, like within the family, within the community, because of these cookbooks, or has it just prompted you to like think about these more?
It's for sure. It's for sure prompted a lot of conversations, and I could tell by the way even my siblings receive certain things with me. You know, they're more conservative. I'm the only one like this, you know, so yeah, you know, when I walk in the house, I practically almost wear tinted prescription shades all the time. So like, you know, like I'm the only one like this. So honestly, after this book and after them seeing the content and hearing the dialogue and stuff like that, that I, you know, talking about some of the stuff I wrote, the way they receive me is warmer. You know, it's even my mother or my parents, like my mom, she saw my well, I have a lot of tattoos, but she saw my arms one day and she said, "Girl, you're so pretty. Why did you do that?" I said, "Well, I'm not anymore," you know, but it's just a different era and time. And now she looks at it and she respects it a certain way. She, you know, understands that that they may have been limited in being themselves. So now she understands that when she sees my kids have different color hair, you know, she's like, "That's cool," you know. And it's just, I know part of it is that book, her hearing that, man, we were forced and told that, you know, your accent is too thick, or my colors are too bright, or, you know, all of these things, that's ghetto, or that's this. No, they told you that. And one day I stopped and I said, "But who told you that?"
Oh my gosh, you're making me tear up. And
I literally had to stop myself from crying twice because I did not want to do that.
I'm trying not to cry on camera, but like, I mean, that's truly the beauty of it. Like, I had my cookbook lunch at a local bookstore here at the Book Larder, and my mom hadn't had the opportunity to hear me speak about the book. She's read the book, and I agree with you, Toya. It's made my family warmer. I think it's unified us too. I think it's made us stronger, because like you said, like, you're paving the way for your kids and your family to have the freedom to be themselves. You're like, if I can do it, you can do it. And it's almost, for me, it's like, I feel very thankful for my parents, because like you, I'm like, you didn't get to do the stuff that I'm doing now. Like, I understand, at least from my parents' perspective, how for them moving to the United States has not been the most wonderful thing in the world for them. It's been the most wonderful thing in the world for my sister and I,
Right.
especially
Right.
as women, even though we're, you know, still a minority. The opportunities we have in this country compared to my home country are like beyond imaginable. Like the fact that I'm here having this conversation with you and I put out a cookbook, like if I were to put out a cookbook in Mexico, I don't think it would have been recognized the way that it is now, because it's almost like, well, yeah, you're Mexican, you cook, here's your cookbook, me too.
Yeah,
You know,
you're
I don't know.
supposed to do it.
If you don't own a restaurant, you know, like it, because I'm a home cook. Again, like I don't have a restaurant. I'm not like,
Yeah, me neither.
I don't consider myself this like chef per se. And, but I do remember, so this was 3 weeks ago, I had my mom at my author talk, and it was really special to have her there. And she came up to me afterwards and she goes, Andy, which is her nickname for me. She goes, Andy, I didn't know that you went through all of this. And, you know, because you're a little kid and like I saw my parents struggling, and I wasn't going to go up to my mom and dad and be like, I'm being bullied for being a Mexican kid not speaking the language, or, you know, it sucks. I miss my family. Like I have no friends because I can't connect because I don't know the language, or like, hey, I don't feel like myself. Like I truly didn't act like myself for 14 years of my life until I started cooking my grandma's recipes. And that was the first time where I was like, I love where I come from. I love the food that I'm making. I love my grandmother. And I started having, you know, I don't know if you're like me. I think a lot of people who love to cook are kind of the same way, but like I love to host, and I was living by myself and I started hosting and having friends over, and I was like, this is my grandma's dish. I wanted to make it for you. It's cold AF outside. I'm going to make you sopa azteca. We're all going to get real cozy. And people started asking me more and more about the recipes. And that's where I realized like, wait, I don't have to hide any of this.
No.
Like, people love this. They're seeing me for who I am. This whole idea that like, I'm not going to be good enough if I'm just Mexican to go out the window. But it took me 14 years. Like I was brought into the country when I was 10, and it wasn't until I was living by myself at age 24 that I really started to peel back the layers. And it's been beautiful to share this with my family in Mexico as well, because there's this big disconnect of, you know, my family in Mexico is better off than we are here in the United States financially. When I think about the other freedoms and privileges that I have living in this country, I'm like, you know, it's way different. But financially, they're better off than we are here. And they're always asking my parents, like, why don't you come back? Or like, why did you go? Like, why don't you split up the family? Why does San Francisco, my dad, stay and works there and makes money? And like, Lorena, you come home and like your family that you miss so much. And we're like, no, because we're a unit. We're team one. Like you cannot split us. Like that's not, we're here in this together. And there's just so much more history to like having been here that like they don't really comprehend. And I think the book has allowed a different bridge where they got to read what it's like to be an immigrant. And they're like, okay, wait, like they're working through something, you know, let's empathize with them too. Yeah. It's built a lot of empathy, I think, and a lot of just a lot of opportunity to be ourselves. Yeah, I love what you shared. You literally are making me cry. I'm just like,
I've just leaned into the tears, and I just do my courtesy wipe, you know, to make sure you know, like I do the quick up, I catch it before it even drops. I don't play with my tears like that, you know, I'm tough. But but it is that it did strike empathy. And you know, I don't know about you, but I would like to bet money that you think about the little girls who could possibly look at the book, or who could possibly stumble upon, like my son, he he will Google anything. He had a stomach bug and he was Googling symptoms, y'all. Like, so
Oh my God.
imagine, like, yeah, in professions, he'll Google, like, he's in a music program, so he looks up audio engineering stuff, that kind of thing.
That's so cool.
And can you imagine that somebody's gonna look up like Mexican chefs or Mexican jobs and one day fumble on YouTube video section and then see you and hear you speak and think, oh, my accent, like, that's okay, that's accepted, look where she is. Like, I know you have to at least think about that. Like the kids who will look at it, the women who will be sitting, or like I say, you know, not the dust off a dream waiting, you know, someone who's had a dream for 60 years and said, you know what, I'm going to take a stab at it because, you know, I may not have thought I was good enough before, but I'm good enough now and my story counts too.
Yeah.
Like, books are being written every day. We just chose to put ours on paper. You know, I believe that we're going to inspire people to, you know, not only get in the kitchen and share love through food, because with our cultures, you know, I believe with minority cultures, food is a love language. It's real heavy.
Yeah.
Because it's the one thing that we had, like, you know, Mindy, I'm sure your family can agree too. Like, look, if you got a hard day, this is going to be this, you know, that's the one thing you can control.
Yeah. Food is
That's
everything.
the one thing you can control.
Yeah.
Definitely. Food is everything. Like it even goes down to like making business in Mexico. Like Toya, like if you and I were thinking about partnering up on some sort of like business endeavor, the first thing we would do is like grab lunch or dinner together, and we would not talk about our business plans at all the entire time we're eating. It would just be eating, having a good time, getting to know each other, and then at the end of that, deciding, okay, do we want to work together? But it's like food is at the center of everything, like you said, and it really is. For me, it really is like the door to people's hearts, like, and the door to people's culture. Like, there's no better way to start talking about something that's really difficult, or like to start introducing someone to something that they're not familiar with, and like serving something delicious, because that sparks interest.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, this is really good. What is it made of? It's made with this. Where did that come from? It came from this. What's the history of that ingredient? Well, this long ago, this is what happened. Like, and that's what I love about the history of food also. Like, people like, you know, people love mole, for example, and I'm like, oh, did you know that it was created by nuns because the Pope was coming to Mexico and they wanted to create something fancy for him, so they threw a bunch of chocolate and spices into a pot, and that's how mole came to be. And so people are like, what? And you just have a better appreciation for food when you know why it even came to be, you know?
Every culture has its own culinary ingenuity, like that innovative, like pulsating flame. Like every culture has that thing. And you know, I think it's cooking is a brilliant way to introduce children to different cultures. You know, I particularly believe in my daddy did it with me unknowingly. You know, he was always different, but he always fed and ate different things, you know. But with my kids, I intentionally do it with different foods, like introducing it to them, or even if they have a movie that goes with the food, or, you know, a lot of things like that, you know, I'll try to incorporate that, and it makes them more interested. And, you know, I think it's a softer way to tell a tale of a culture sometimes, you know, because, you know, even thinking about slavery, I say, you know, when I explained it in the class, I said, imagine you having the hardest day of your life, but all you have is this food in front of you. And this food, you can make this, and this is going to be the good moment of the day. This is the one thing I can take control of in my life. You know, you have a bad day, you know, on a bad day, I love cheese fries. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, comfort food.
Stop. I'm telling you, I can blow through a platter real quick on a bad day. It's something about that.
It just fills you. I love what you just said though, because it is sometimes food is the only like that good thing in your day. Like no
only
matter
good thing.
what, it can be the good thing in your day. And it's
Mhm.
also, I love what you said about like, maybe I can't control my environment, maybe I can't control what's happening to me, but like, I can always count on what I'm going to eat. And for me, that really resonates, because there's a story for another time, but I was married and divorced at a very young age. I got married at age 20, divorced by age 24. This also kind of sparked the book. And unfortunately, because of like how I used to see myself previously, I was in relationships like the one with my ex-husband where my culture wasn't celebrated. I didn't cook any Mexican food with him because he didn't like it, and it would be to the point where like he saw me chopping onions and it was like a questionnaire of like, where's the onion gonna go? And I'm like, it's an onion, like it's the flavor. So imagine, leaving that.
Yeah.
When I was going through my divorce, like everything was changing in my life. At the same time, my very best friend, we were both 24 when she got diagnosed with breast cancer. So she's going through breast cancer. I'm going through my divorce.
Wow.
And I'm like, the only thing I can control in this moment is what I eat. And that's where I really started to dig deep into my grandma's recipes, because I needed comfort. I was like, I need to go back in time
You
to
have to.
10 years old, where life was good, and I
Right.
could go to grandma's house and there was a plate of something delicious.
Yeah.
That's what we do, and I think that's why people write down recipes, because it is not just food. Food is never just food. If you're listening to this and you're out there and you're eating just food, I encourage you to try something out, because food cannot just be food. We're not here to just have feedings. They're
Right.
truly
The feeling that you get. Even I watched from the kitchen, I watched under the table, all of my kids rub their feet together while they eat the same way I do.
happiness. Like,
Yes.
like
And
happiness.
I saw the youngest girl, and I saw her from under the table, and she was eating and she was just rubbing her feet. And I said, look at that. It must be good to her. It must be good to her. And you touched on that thing about divorce and stuff like that, and people try to stay away from conversations like that. But I believe those things, those trauma, like you always somehow find your mama's house or your family's house and food somewhere in the rounding of recovery.
Yeah.
Somehow, like I was explaining to my editor about like the relationship with food I had when I was 16 and pregnant, and how like and I was explaining, no, it was a big thing for me to go and buy. And she said, buy ice cream every day. That was the one thing that I could do, that was the one thing I could just partake in. Like my whole life shifted. A parent at 16.
Yeah.
My world was rocked. I was instantly in a world where I knew that my choices rearranged everyone's life. My mom dropped out of college. My dad had to work hard offshore. My siblings were, sending money, and they didn't have any kids. So I'm thinking, man, they don't even have kids and they're trying to help us, and that one thing, like, man, canned ravioli or cheese fries or like all of those things. Man, Bluebell cookies and cream ice cream. Do you know what it felt like for me to get a big piece of cookie in a scoop?
It's like, just like it's all gonna work out almost.
It's gonna work out.
It's gonna work out. It's going to work out.
And it did.
A little bit of hope in every day. I love you. I love this story.
I love you too, girl. Come on, Mindy, join us. Love us. Love you.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I'm listening to this with like tears in my eyes, because
I know,
I come from like a second generation immigrant family as well. And my like growing up, like it was a chaotic household, loving, right? But my grandparents were staying with us because my grandmother had a stroke and she needed care 24/7. And my cousins were living with us because they were, coming from overseas and going to school here. We had like anywhere from like 7 to 9 people in the house every night. My parents worked full time, and my mom would come home from a full day at the bank and she would make dinner from scratch, like every night. We never had takeout. I mean, part of it was because my grandparents are more traditional. They need rice, they need veggies, they need like some sort of protein, right? And like it's an immense amount of love and labor that goes into like making food for your family. And as a kid, you don't know that, right? You just know that food shows up on the table. You're getting a good meal out of this, and you never, like your parents are going to make it, so you're not aware of how hard they work. And like listening to you guys talk about this stuff is just like touching on so many sort of like childhood memories for me as well. It's like really kind of like lovely to like sit and think about food as just something that really like ties like everyone together, so strongly in terms of like sense memory and that sort of thing. But I kind of wanted to like talk about you guys talk about like and in reading your cookbooks, you guys talk about a lot about cooking, like home cooking and cooking family recipes and cooking things that you eat, your comfort food, your go-to. So I was like what were the difficult parts of kind of distilling this home cooking, this tradition, this grandma recipes where you don't have measurements, and translating it into an actual cookbook that people can use? Because I read these books, and Toya, I found your writing especially so helpful. Like in reading it, you made your like the recipes so approachable. Like you had so many like tips and like fun facts and like tricks to like get it right the first time. I found your article or like your essay on making a roux, and the color grades of a roux was fascinating. And I was like, this is like all from experience, and you were able to somehow like lay that out into like a readable and like really like understandable like essay. So I was wondering, like, what was it like translating parts of your culture and your family recipes into something readable and shareable that everyone can access?
I think I immediately, and it may be the teacher, well, I know it's for sure the teacher side of me, because I taught like classic recipes and stuff often. And what I believe that how everyone has to have fight or flight, because you live on a land where you have to protect yourself. You need food. So everyone has to know how to cook in some way or form naturally. But what happens is typically in life, we encounter food bullies, and food bullies are, did you make that from scratch? How did you do it? What technique did you use? So, and they give you recipes, some people do it intentionally where they'll give you recipes and it's missing some pieces. And I've always, all of the trouble, like physical trouble I've gotten into in school was all behind defending someone, right? So I think the way I teach and the way I write, I do it for the people who are just like, I don't think I could do anything. I'll burn water. Soon as someone tells me something like that, I'm like, give me at least 2 hours with you. I guarantee you at least know how to make a throw together meal, and you'll know how to make a roux. And once you know how to make a roux, you can have anything. People talk about, moments, how people get in those hypothetical conversations about zombies and apocalypse. Let me tell you something, baby, as long as we got something that I could smother, when I tell you 10 to 20 people will eat good every night, and that was my approach. I feel like people approach it from a standpoint of knowing, like, and I like to break things down to just what it is. I think, the one time my mother came to watch a gumbo class of mine, she didn't look at me. She sat like this and the stage was right there. And she just listened to what I was saying. And I said, you can make gumbo in 6 steps. And she did this. And I said, look, y'all, this is my mom. I'm about to, look how she's looking. Everybody looked at it. And she was just like doing like this. I don't know. You said 6 steps. You said it, not me. And I said, this is the thing. I said, all you have to do is make the roux, add the trinity, the onion, celery, bell peppers, add the stock, add the meats, add the seasoning, and let it simmer. And she did this. And I said, you see, the Young and the Restless wasn't included in that, stopping, watching TV, talking on the phone, all of that kind of stuff. When you break it down to those everything in life has a base minimum you could break it down to. And if you could break it down to those steps, even the really difficult recipes, it's about wording and being careful and mindful about the person. It's like a gentle hand holding. That's my recipe style. Like, come on, let's go make this roux. I know you're afraid you're gonna burn the house down. You won't. That kind of, so that's my approach. And, because I just really believe that everyone can find their lane in the kitchen.
I love so much your breakdown and how you go about eating. It actually reminds me of this quote, which I'm totally gonna butcher, but it's about this little kid and his dad is an art teacher. And he goes, Dad, why are you teaching people art? Did they forget? And I remember hearing that quote when I was like in 6th grade. And you just reminded me of that quote because like you said, like food is inherent, like inherently we all need food. I do believe that inherently we all know how to cook. Right. It's kind of like art, right? Some people are like, oh, I could never be an artist. I'm a terrible drawer. Right. And it's like, we all have an artist within us. We all have a cook within us. It's about starting where you feel comfortable. Like my introduction to cooking was actually through baking because I come from a family of bakers. My grandmother and my mom are bakers. So baking was kind of how I first started to become familiar in the kitchen and familiar with how things should feel and taste and smell and the sounds play a huge role too. And so that's how I started to get comfortable. And like for me, and I pulled it out because I wanted to show you guys. This is my grandma's recipe book. This is what I inherited. It is this thick. And if I open up pages, you will see how it is well used. There's oil stains everywhere. I mean, to me, this is like, it's the most precious thing.
Tell me you scanned it. Oh my God.
So scanned. It's so scanned. Oh my God. It's the most precious thing that I own, but you can see how like here she literally has like 500 grams of cheese and then she's missing a bunch of things. And then there's not even a method. She just wrote the ingredients and it's like, figure it out. And so I set out to recreate all these recipes with my mom, which was equally as challenging because my mom learned to cook from watching my grandma. So she's all about hands, she's all about hands and smells and tasting as you go and like inherently knowing what to add. She's like, oh, onion's too strong. I'm going to add a little bit of sugar, and I'm like, those are the things that you start to pick up as you start cooking. But for me, it meant like, okay, well, I want to make this something that's easy and accessible for people. And again, at the time I was trying to gift it to my cousins and my sister, and none of us grew up learning how to cook. So I'm like, okay, I need to make it easy. And I literally would go to my mom's house and I would bring measuring spoons and cups, but she was like, what is that doing here? But I'm like, we're going to sit here and we're going to add 1 tablespoon at a time until you get the flavor you're trying to achieve, because I need to figure out how much we're actually putting, because my mom would just be like, oh, just a splash. I'm like, I cannot write a splash on a cookbook, Mom. People are not gonna know what that is.
I used to use sounds when I was in class sometime. I would say, they said, well, how much crab ball do you add? And I said, bloop. I said, follow the sound. Bloop. I stopped and I started using measurements after that.
Sometimes that helps, and I feel like some of those things too, that's like the fun challenge of writing a recipe that's going to be written and going to be shared with someone that can't spend time with you in the kitchen. Because it's like, how can I share like all the little techniques and tricks and like things that I do that make this recipe like more fun or more accessible or easier to make, right? So I think for me in my cookbook, like a lot of the recipes, especially if you're Mexican, they're not going to be anything new to you because you're going to be like, this is what you usually will find in any Mexican, household. But there is a few other things in there that are just like my own, or things like that I just used to eat as a kid. Like it's probably not totally culturally appropriate, but I have a curry recipe in my book because my grandma introduced me to curry. And it's my grandma's curry, and it's not an Indian curry, and it's not a Thai curry. It's just a curry made with Mexican spices, and my grandma sort of came up with. And I loved it, and I added it to the book because at the end of the day, this book is an homage to my childhood recipes that I wanted to share with the world. But yeah,
and they knew a little more though. They knew a lot, like your grandmother, I'm sure, knew a lot intuitively, like knowing what curry even does. They know how to heal. They knew how to heal through food. Like I even make my own cough syrup that my mama, we didn't have insurance, to go to the doctor. So we had remedies, and we used to take this stuff called goose grease. And it's grease from a goose. You mix it with lemon and a little bit of honey, makes it tolerable, and you swallow it. But we, during the quarantine, we fought, helped build up my parents' immune system. They immunocompromised by doing that same measurement, but not using the grease from a goose, because that was a little tricky on the internet. That was a little scary. I said, Mom, we're not going to buy goose grease from online. Who knows what it could be? It could be pig fat. I don't know what it could be, but that intuitiveness of knowing, like, even though it may have been approached like she made a meal, she could have known, I feel a little achy today. Let me eat some curry.
Yeah, I love.
That's like inflammation.
Yeah,
100%. I love the idea of food medicine in general because it's so true. Like every time I'm feeling sick, and I do this now because of my mom, but I'm like, oh, I'm feeling something in my throat. She's like, chew garlic, just chew garlic.
Yes, my dad does that.
And I literally will do it. And then now, I make I call it like my vampire juice, because I literally boil a ton of garlic with a ton of ginger root. And then I add a little bit of honey and I add lemon to it. And I will just make the biggest batch of it. And if I'm feeling sick, that's like what I'm drinking throughout the day. It's like my vampire juice. I'm like, don't come near me. Like I have like garlic breath, but like I am going to soothe. And that's the thing. I do believe that like there are certain ingredients and anything, truly, if you understand it, if you understand what it does for the body,
right?
It is food medicine. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying. I have a group of friends, and there's a word in Spanish, chismosa, which has been, kind of seen in a negative light over the years, because it means a woman that's gossipy. But that word only came to be because back in the day, women would gather and share information and share recipes and share what was going on. And unfortunately, because of misogyny, they saw the power in women coming together and sharing information, and they started calling them chismosas and started saying, gossiping is not good. You should not gather and gossip and share information. So now, my group of friends, we literally call ourselves the chismosas on our group text. And all we do is like share information with each other. I'm like, oh, look at this cool thing I found out. Look at this recipe. Did you see this video? There's this concert happening. What are you guys doing? How are we feeling? We're the chismosas. And like, I love to, and I bring that up because I think that that same thing can be applied to food. And we went through this entire wave in like 2008, like early 2000s, where it was like fat is bad for you. Or like the same thing with like MSG, right? Just like certain ingredients that get used in like cultural dishes, and somehow they get put into the spotlight of like, that's unhealthy.
True.
And it's like, no, let me tell you what's unhealthy. It's the processed food that we're being sold. But there's nothing healthier to me than like real ingredients, whole ingredients
Mhm.
coming together to make a beautiful meal. Like what is more healing than that, So
And not abusing it,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. They'll siphon from our cultures and they'll abuse it. And when they overuse it and they add preservatives and all that stuff to it and they eat it at the wrong time every day, like when I used to do recipes in front of people, now I'm cooking for like 60 people. Of course, a pound of butter is going to look scary to people. And I have to tell people it's not going to all be on one spoon, baby, calm down. Like, and it's like, look, I don't eat this on a random Tuesday. Like, this is not, you don't go about eating gumbo 4 days a week. Like, that's just not how you live. And I think, the American way of just excessively doing everything and over, and it does put it in that category where it's bad. And it's like, yeah, it's bad to eat every day.
yeah.
But in celebration, times, like it's good to bring out those things because it's almost like cooking a meal from your background is like inviting ancestors to the table. That's gotta feel good.
It feels good. I'm like, it feels good. We know what it feels like. It feels good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you guys so much for this frankly incredible conversation. You guys like went the mile, like covered the range. It was really such a pleasure to like listen in and just be a part of this talk. And before we only have a few minutes left, but I'd love to give you guys a chance to just share with us what is like a couple of recipes from your books that you would highly recommend us try out, like your top rated in this book. And also like share what's next for you. Are you guys doing any like signings, any appearances that people can follow you at and possibly meet in person if that is so?
You want to go first, Andrea?
I can go first. From my book, I mean, I'm super biased because I would ask my mom to make this recipe for me on my birthday every year. So chiles rellenos are like my first go-to recipe in my book that I, encourage people to try. Also, we're getting into like cozy soup season. So like sopa azteca, which is translated to like Aztec soup. That is my favorite thing to make, especially if you're gathering with people, because it's really interactive. There's a lot of toppings that go into it. And so it's like really fun to like see people put toppings in their soup. I am guilty of adding so many that my soup looks like stew by the time that I'm done, because I will pile on the tortilla strips and I'll pile on the hard-boiled eggs, and it's just super, super delicious. But also the bacalao a la vizcaína is this just delicious like fish stew that my mom makes around Christmas time. And so I'm starting to like get eager for it. So that's in the cookbook. Highly recommend those three. And then for me next, and I can't believe I'm saying this because it feels really crazy, but I'll be in your neck of the woods, Mindy. I'm actually going to be speaking at this year's Cherry Bomb Cooks and Books Festival. So I'll be there on Sunday speaking, but I'll be there the entire weekend too. So if anyone listening is going to be there, like, please come say hi. I love making friends and expanding my community. I'm just super excited to be there, and I'll be signing books. And Fanny Gerson from Fan Fan Donuts and I collaborate on a donut. So check out Fan Fan Donuts over the next week if you're not going to be at the event, and you can try the Mamacita Fan Fan Donut collab.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Toya?
All right. So for my cookbook, I would suggest the red beans and rice. The red beans, I'm telling you, that's a killer recipe. The the mac and cheese, the crawfish bisque. It's basically like an etouffee, which is a crawfish tail gravy. And it's the most lengthy recipe I think I have in the book. It's where you take the empty crawfish heads and you stuff it with a crawfish stuffing and you bake it, and then you cook that in the gravy. Okay. And that's like something that people typically eat around Easter. and it's labor intensive. So it's one of those things where if you get invited to a meal and you get that's like, oh, they really like me. They like me, you know. So that's another one. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think I have one of the most doable gumbos that you could ever run across, you know, and I think you'll be able to capture the flavor that you see in the photo, you know. And as far as coming up next, as we're about to kick off the book tour, I'm very excited about it, about the launch. Is launching the top of Black History Month. It's just giving everything for me. So I'm really excited to just jump in and get people inspired to live their life loudly, like for real. So I'm really excited about everything now.
Oh, can we pre-order, Toya? Because I'm about to like go online right now.
Yes. I'm about to order yours today too. I can't wait.
That gumbo is calling my name.
Oh, girl, you're gonna love it.
I'm ready. To come sooner. Cannot wait.
Yeah.
I hope I get
I'm like
to be in
so
both of y'all neck of the
excited.
woods at some point.
Oh yeah. Stop
So
by
please get
Word. Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. Like Thanksgiving is coming up. I have inspiration. I'm ready, I think.
Good.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. I
appreciate it.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
I just wanted to pop back on. Yeah, thank all of you for this wonderful discussion. This is amazing. I think so many of us had tears in our eyes along with you. So it's just wonderful to have you join us. And we're going to have a 15-minute break between this panel and our next one. So for those of you that are sticking with us for the rest of the day, you can click into the next panel via the link, the Zoom link that we emailed you, and we're also dropping it in the chat. Joni, my lovely colleague, just dropped in the chat, so we hope you'll stay with us. But yeah, thank you so much, Andrea, Toya, and Mindy. What a great way to kick off the day. This is wonderful.
It was a great conversation.
I wish we could keep.
I know
the rest of the day. I'm so sad that I have to go, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was so lovely. Thank you for chatting, and thank you, Gabrielle and Mindy, for putting this together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. You guys were
Bye.
wonderful. Congratulations on the books.
Thank you so much. Bye.